This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self. Hey everyone, it's Rosie. I am so excited about this conversation that I had with the amazing Brian Garish. He and I met a few years ago. He had me come in and do some stuff for his leaders when he was the president of Banfield Pet Hospital. And since then, he is now with the larger parent company, Mars Veterinary Health. He has been the president, and now he's moved into a new role of global chief client officer, expanding all throughout Europe, Asia, all about pets, amazing stuff. You know, they have 70,000 associates. And with that size and that growth, he is the epitome of a humble, authentic, courageous, vulnerable human leader, and how you keep those practices in place and how you embed human care and connection throughout the organization. So just a lot of really good practical nuggets of what he's learned throughout his career, some of his leadership lessons. We talk about accountability, talk about, that regardless of what business you are in, we are all in the people business. And just there's so much richness in this. He is an amazing, amazing human, an amazing leader. I think you're going to get a ton out of this conversation. Take a listen. Brian, it is so good to be reconnected. And I don't know why I didn't have you on the podcast sooner, because you are the epitome of a people-focused leader who is doing amazing things. So just thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. It's so great to see you again and reconnect and think the world of you. So I'm honored to be here.
Oh, mutual love, mutual love. Well, we're going to dive in. So one of the things, first of all, like who doesn't love pets, right?
Exactly.
And I think when you and I first met during the pandemic and you had me do some stuff for your leaders, and I think I had just become a pet parent. And here we are, how many years later, I have 2 Cavapoos. And if you look on our website, they are our co-chiefs of well-being for Salvation Partners.
As they should be, by the way.
They should be. Although sometimes when we're having meetings, I'm like, you are a disruptive team member. I need to now give you feedback. But with all that, what I love, there's so many things I love about you, but what I love about you from a leadership standpoint is that, CEO of large company, your leadership has continued to grow since we've met. And you maintain this humbleness and you maintain this commitment to really putting the people first, having people feel connected, not up in some ivory tower. Talk to me about where that came from and how do you put that into practice? Because I think, it's so easy as businesses scale, they're just thinking about their growth. And there is this disconnect between corporate and, fill in the blank. And you've done a really good job of trying to care for that.
Well, thank you. And it's incredibly, incredibly tough because there is so much that's happening on a day-to-day basis. And it's really easy to get caught up in that day-to-day of, the report that comes in or what's happening around us or what our associates are experiencing or what's happening in the hospital as an example, or even within the functions that you have. And it's about trying to stay grounded on who is it that we really are here to serve and who is at the center. And, as you talk about, your dogs and when I talk to anyone about, what I get to do, it's so incredibly exciting. When I say I'm in veterinary medicine, everyone always wants to talk about their cats or dogs. And it's exciting because you see how emotionally connected we are to our pets and how important that human animal bond is. And I start there because if we focus on what's our core, what's at our center, it's for us, it's the pet, and it's our associates that are extending this care. And so it's so easy to get caught up in the reports, the numbers, the functional directives that are coming, but it's about trying to stay grounded on those who we serve. And it really is the pet, it's our associates, and it's our clients and our pet owners. And where that started, I guess, was from, little old 16 Brian who wanted that part-time job, financial independence from his parents. And I got a job at Walgreens, stocking shelves, sweeping floors, mopping bathrooms, cashiering, whatever they asked me to do, you name it, I did it. And I learned such powerful lessons at an early age. And I learned about what does it mean to be on the front lines and actually the one delivering that care. And so in this time I was in the pharmacy world, but it's about taking care of patients and really being a community little business that serve the community needs. And when you'd see how corporate strategies were intended to be or what the statements were about, it always came down to us as a team on the front lines to deliver on that, to take care of the patients, to take care of our customers, and to work together as a team. And I was so thankful to have some mentors that really took me under their wing and developed me. And as I started growing my career, I really got to learn that corporate strategy comes down to the store, but it takes a team to execute that strategy. And then so even as I grow in my career to this day, I always try to stay grounded in our initiatives, our strategies. How does it become developed in our hospitals and in our clinics worldwide? And how do our associates feel about it? Because if they feel connected and aligned, more chances are they're going to actually do it. And if they do it, then we all win. So it's about trying to stay grounded back to 16-year-old Brian, but still really stay grounded that no matter what we say we stand for as an organization, it does have to take our associates to actually do that work. And in our case, the human animal bond's so strong, and we have so many great associates worldwide that all they want to do is make a better world for pets. So I kind of say we have the greatest purpose, a better world for pets, and we have the greatest associates who get to unlock that. But we can only unlock that if we stay really connected to them.
I love everything about that. And, it's so funny because it's still to this day, I can't tell you how often I hear organizations where, the leadership team goes off for a strategic planning offsite, right? And it's this really small group of people who have a very skewed view, especially if as the organization gets larger, because they're really disconnected from the people who are actually serving your customer. And then it's pushed out and people are supposed to implement it and they wonder why it falls flat. Or, they use all the change management tools and processes in the world and they wonder why it falls flat. I'm like, well, because you're not caring for how humans show up in the face of change and how humans show up in the face of, wanting to be connected to something. They're completely missing what it means to be human in the middle of these plans and strategies. So
Absolutely. We all deal with a lot in our personal lives. It doesn't matter what position you have in the organization. We all have things that are competing in our personal lives. And it's about how we tackle our own emotions and deal with what our own experiences are. I know you were talking about, how we're all responsible for our own feelings. And that was a lesson I had to learn early on is despite how much you want to help someone, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. And people are responsible for their own feelings. And you've talked about that, and that's always resonated with me. And as I bring that up, because we sometimes miss the perspective of who is it that we're ultimately trying to help and serve. And I feel like when I see organizations do it the best, those mission, vision, value statements aren't statements that are on a wall or on a website. It really becomes something that's lived on a day-to-day basis. And the associates get to connect to it and they get to experience it because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you want your company culture to be. It's about how you show up, how you have empathy, how you have compassion, how you lead with that human element. And when people can feel seen, valued, and heard, they can then become connected to what that ultimate vision is. And they're the ones that's bringing it to life. The ones that are closest to the clients and customers and consumers, and depending what business you're in, they're the ones that are actually bringing the culture to life. And that's what people actually experience.
100%. Like you can go into any organization, right? Or any retail store, you name it. And there's times where I'm like, oh, that person hates their life versus the people that really, and it's a totally different experience as a customer, 100%. So, I mean, you have a gajillion locations worldwide. I don't know how many, you have a lot. And so, practically, to not have it just be words on a wall, what are some of the things that you have done that you have found to be effective to really operationalize that and have people feel connected to your strategy, connected to your purpose and values on a day in, day out basis? What does that look like in action?
Yeah, it's tough, and we have to stay grounded again on who we're actually serving. And so it's about visiting our locations. So, we have clinics worldwide in over 20 countries. And when you have 70,000 associates, it's a lot of people. And we have to try to talk to as many as possible to really understand what's working, what's not working, but understand like what's a day in the life of our doctors or our veterinary nurses or our practice managers, those that are responsible for the clinics. And so like when I had the opportunity to travel, I mean, it's been so great to visit so many clinics worldwide. It's about spending time with people, talking with people, and understanding what's working and what's not working. And what I've found is if you really create the right environment, and sometimes it depends on what country you're in and the cultures you're dealing with, but it's trying to like show that I'm a person and that I see that we have problems. And so maybe it's like, hey, this, how's this going? Or we changed this because it wasn't maybe the best experience for our associates, or we're adding this new benefit for you. I try to do something in a way that just shows that I really care and I'm interested in their perspective. And once you invite people into it and it feels authentic, they'll tell you everything. And it's so great because you want to hear everything, the good and the bad. And I then try to also make sure our leaders are aware that what I'm being told is not a reflection on you. It's an opportunity for us to understand where we're doing well and amplify that and maybe do more of that across the country or across the globe. But also, what are the pain points our associates are facing? So we actually know what we can do to help them. Because if we help them, then guess what? That builds better intact teams, that helps retention, and it really solves what we ultimately want to solve. So no matter your position in the organization, you're trying to drive impact. And the way I always found impact is by visiting our local clinics and talking to our people and listening and working on what's working and what's not working.
And I love that because as large as you are with 70,000 associates, it's, that can be hard to do. And I even, have clients where, they might only have 10 locations or 4 locations. And sometimes it gets delegated down to the next level of senior leader. And not that that doesn't matter, but there is something about the presence of a CEO going around and again, and not just like the ceremonial, haha, I'm in town, but really to your point, interacting. Like it reminds me of Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry Wehmiller. I got to sit in on one of his listening sessions. So I mean, they're global, huge, and he does a listening tour every single year. And a small group of people. I think there's probably like maybe 15 people in the room, and it's a focus. It's not just a free for all, but it's a focus on a particular thing. And then someone else is in there taking notes, so he can truly just be present and listen and take the information. And it's part of what makes their culture so amazing and why people study Barry Wehmiller and whatever. And so I see a lot of that in you. It's like here, and even if people who are listening, you're not a CEO of a global huge company, you're the CEO of your own life. But guess what? You can do it to other people. Like you can ask your kids what's going well, what isn't. You can ask your neighbors. I mean, there's other ways that you can take that and like if we just spend time with people and actually are present and put our phones down and listen and ask questions and actually care about the answer, like that's you said something earlier. You said, to feel heard and valued. It's a core human need to feel like we are heard and seen. And there's all this great work from Harvard's Flourishing at Work and Zach Mercurio, The Power of Mattering. Like we have this core human need for mattering is to feel like there's significance and that we are significant to someone else's life, like we're having an impact, but also that we understand the significance of like our work. So it's twofold. We need to feel like we're valued, but we also have to feel like our contributions are adding value to a bigger purpose. And so everything you shared is just so spot on. So you go around and you're listening to folks. So that's you, but you can't be everywhere. And you said cultures experience at the local level. So how do you embed that further in the organization? So at every local clinic, every local hospital, every location, there is that sense of living the purpose, of being connected to it, of feeling like people are heard.
It's tough, but it does take role modeling and it takes clear expectations and clear follow up. And I think one of the best characteristics of any leader is yes, it's listening and it's the follow up. And I think that's a very powerful combination because when you can listen, people will tell you. I mean, they'll tell you everything and anything. I mean, there's some of those times I'm like, wow, that was a lot. and you can see of how much they care. And if you listen for what the stated and unstated concerns are, that becomes, really powerful. Because sometimes, like, you can hear someone be, really excited about something, and you can say, well, is that what else is, what's behind that, if you will, or what's behind that statement? And so you really have to listen to the stated and unstated concerns, but you have to make sure, though, that this becomes part of your culture. So I'll give you an example. What we really did was, when I stepped back to when I joined Banfield, or when I was coming into Europe and Asia, I did the same thing. I've done this throughout my whole entire career. It's whenever I had taken on a new assignment or a new territory, I would go in in whatever role I had, it didn't matter, but I would always watch how people were doing a visit. And to the extent you can, it's always like, just pretend I'm not here. I just want to see how you visit. And what's interesting to me is, typically what I've seen is the senior most person then comes in and does like most of the talking. So let's just say you're in a typical multi-unit type of environment and you may have a couple layers. Instead of going in and watching maybe the leader of that function within the clinic, or whatever your job or role is, you probably have like sub functions in, stores or outlets, or locations or factories or what have you. It's watching how each of the leaders actually conducts sessions with their people. And they then are role modeling what a visit tends to look like, or how they actually interact with their colleagues. And so what I would typically see is then, like, the senior most person does all the talking on the visit, but the visit isn't for the senior person. The visit is the senior person's opportunity to really get close with our clients, in our case, like our pet owners, and to really understand what our associates are experiencing or not experiencing. So when we would conduct visits, I would try to role model what we wanted to see and how we wanted to see it. And then it's that great partnership with, like, we call HR P&O, like our P&O department, to really then have nice training platforms and programs to make sure our field leaders have the tools and resources to conduct visits. Because it's powerful when I'm able to do that, but it's even more powerful when it's an everyday behavior of every one of our leaders, of when they come into a clinic, they are talking about what's working, maybe some areas of opportunity, but more importantly, it's, how are you doing? How are you, like, really, really doing? And what's working, what's not working, and just getting to understand what's happening in the clinic. And then making sure that every layer that you may have, or every level of leadership, is in service of those that they're trying to help develop. But they're trying to help develop by really spending time on not just the what, the result, but the how the work actually gets done.
I love that. It reminds me of, I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but Simon Sinek talks about, that a weak leader will talk about how many people they lead, or that report to them. And a strong leader will talk about how many people they have the privilege of serving, right? It's that upside down pyramid. Like, I'm at the base and serve you. So let's talk very pragmatically, because this is obviously the world we live in. Like, we help with culture and future proofing leadership and developing leaders. And it's so fascinating that there are so many organizations that still put people in management and leadership role. I was talking to a client yesterday, and they don't ever train them of how to lead, because it's a totally different way of being, totally different mindset, et cetera. So you have that going on. Then you have where, okay, they have people in leadership roles and they've done training and they've laid out expectations, but the people are just not good at it, but they keep them in that role because they're like, well, they feel bad and they don't want to demote them. And so what I see across the clients that we work with is, one of the biggest frustration points from employees is lack of accountability. So leaders that have like a people pleasing faulty program that, oh, I don't want to have difficult conversations, you are pissing off your employees because they see, oh, that person isn't cutting it or whatever. But also when there's leaders themselves that are not walking the talk, that are not operating in alignment, only when, the boss comes into town. How have you handled that when you have leaders that it's just not working? And, because so many organizations ignore it, and they don't have the accountability. And it's not like, oh, you screw up one strike, you're out type of thing. But there are people that should not be leading others. You can lead yourself. You can always be a leader, but you shouldn't be leading other people. How have you handled that?
It's a very tough one. And I'll go back to some early lessons in my leadership journey. And I remember, I think it was like an old Harvard Business Review article, and I think it was called, like, beware of talented C players, something along those lines. And the oversimplification of some fantastic research, by the way, was really like, it's if you were to group people, leaders, into, let's say, A's, B's, and C's. If we have this as an organization, let's just for simplicity purposes, let's say we have 9 people. You're going to be at risk as a leader or as a company of losing your A players, your best people, by tolerating the performance and behaviors of those C players. Because most people, I mean, we've all been on teams, and we can think about like the best team we've ever been on and think about from top to bottom, like how great everyone was. Maybe it was levels of trust or, just the output and camaraderie, whatever it was. We've also been on teams that maybe, not so good. And if you look at that, you can always see like who wasn't maybe carrying their weight, or who wasn't really, maybe didn't have the right capabilities, that, or wasn't contributing to the team in the way in which maybe the team needed or the organization needed. The point is, if you are an A player and you see a C player, you are looking to the leader to do something about that. And it's like, if you as a leader can't take care of those C players, as an A player, how are you going to take care of me? How are you going to develop me? And we see that you actually lose some of your best talent by putting up maybe with mediocrity. I think the other thing I was just going to mention is, I think it's really focusing on that how, not just the what. I think oftentimes companies reward the what because that's like the P&L or the initiatives that we have to go out and execute. But the how the work gets done is just as important as the what. And if we genuinely believe that high levels of engagement, high levels of belonging means that the teams come together and feel stronger, and you have that psychological safety and they outperform teams that don't, well, then it's your job as a leader to create that. And you can't delegate your responsibility to not develop your A players and your best players, but also deal with your bottom performers. It's always nice to be able to try to give them a shot and give them development and give them every opportunity, because that's the right thing to do. But at sometimes, if you have to call it, you have to call it. And you have to, again, stay focused on who are we actually serving. So we have the responsibility to serve, like in this case, let's just say it's 9 leaders. But if those 9 leaders are responsible for larger parts of the organization, you then want to reverse that pyramid that you mentioned, because we have got to tolerate the best performers and that great how, but we have to be intolerant of people that's not going to take care of those that they're serving, those that they have the responsibility and opportunity to take care of. And ultimately, it's taking care of the masses. And if our masses or our majority aren't being led right, we owe it to them. And it's about reframing that pyramid. It's not about the top. It's actually about the other side of that pyramid, is where the work is happening and where they need the best culture.
I love how you framed that, and it's so true, and it's fascinating. You talk about, we give people chances and 100%, and I've personally coached many leaders who, in our research, we identified these faulty programs, and we identified 7 core faulty programs and then 3 cousin programs, and the cousin programs always showed up in tandem with one of the core programs, which is why we call them cousins, because they never stood alone. But one of the cousin programs is called the protector. And that one actually surprised me. And the protector is where we are holding ourselves responsible for someone else's experience, someone else's emotions, someone else's outcomes. And so we try to like save them from struggle, save them from discomfort. And so you can see in a leadership standpoint, then it's, I'll jump in and do it for them because they're struggling, rather than coaching them up or coaching them out. Or I'm just going to now avoid them because I've had these feedback conversations and it makes them uncomfortable and they cry and I don't want to deal with that, or whatever. So it either goes in tandem with like control freak tendencies where they just take over and do stuff themselves, which then stresses them out, or it goes in tandem with people pleasing tendencies where I'm going to avoid having those conversations. But it's like at some level, they're holding themselves responsible. And so I always say, who is ultimately responsible for the outcome? Like, it's back to school time as we're recording this. Well, kids are ultimately responsible for their own grades, homework, work, right? So, and every individual associate is responsible for how they show up, their experience, etc. And so if they are ultimately responsible for the outcome, I always say, it's provide guardrails, provide every opportunity for them to be successful. Like, no one wants to wake up and feel like they suck every day and they're struggling and whatnot. So a lot of times it's like, the kindest thing that we can do if someone truly is not a fit because culturally they just cannot show up in alignment with your values, or competency wise, this particular role is just not working. It's not about have a warm body in there, it's better than nothing. Because 'cause I'll tell you, we have clients where now safety becomes an issue. If that's big for them, engagement becomes an issue. Like, we sometimes think, "Well, we're already short-staffed, it's better to just keep this person." Mm, no.
No, gosh, absolutely. And it's understanding that impact that has on so many people. And that is always the worst thing that you can do because it creates toxicity in your organization and it sends the wrong message that you're really not willing to fight for us and do what we actually need as a team. It's really, really sad. And, I just go back in my career, like when I've been part of the best teams, it wasn't by accident because those are the best leaders that for me role model. You can have very high standards and high engagement at the same time. You can simultaneously come into a new situation that maybe it is a bit of a turnaround. You can improve standards and engagement at the same time. Sometimes we create these myths of, oh, well, I can only do one or the other, or I have to get my great people first, and then I can fix it. It kind of has to all work together. And we actually are letting our people down by making excuses for the culture in which they experience. And it's unacceptable. And I think if we think about that impact, if we focus in on what is it that we're actually doing, as I mentioned, like our purpose is a better world for pets. Like, how exciting is that? Like, they choose to be part of this industry because it's a calling. So we get the responsibility just to take care of them. And so we've always tried to reframe it of like, we have the greatest job. We have people who love pets. All they want to do is make a better world for pets. Your job as a leader is to create the right environment so they feel seen, valued, heard. They have the tools and resources to do what they do. We can understand what's maybe not working or some societal issues and create the right benefits for them and create the right well-being tools so they can, really be their whole self at work, not just, like, well, come to work and you do this way. And when you go home, like, keep it separate. We are one person now, whether we're at home or at work, we bring all that with us and we should honor it and we shouldn't say it's wrong, but we need to make sure that we're fostering that right environment so that it does work. The last thing I was going to mention that you said that really sparked another thought was providing those guardrails. When I was at my best is when, my leader was like, we just need to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to let you determine how we do it. And sometimes I made really bad decisions and, but I got the coaching and feedback from it. And because there were guardrails. And then often, if it worked, then I also got the learning from it, which developed a transferable skill because I had to solve a problem, which then meant I'm trying to think about how we do A, B, and C, but it also requires aligning a team. And I've come to learn, that is like almost like returning authority. So like when we think about leaders, we want to be clear on the what. We have to do, maybe these three big initiatives, but you need to determine how you're going to do that. And I'm going to be here to help you and give you coaching, give you support so you can do that. But then ultimately, you're creating your own action plan and you're creating your own plan. So if it's not working at some point, if we have to make a very tough decision, it becomes, well, this is the work that you were doing or weren't doing. It wasn't come do Brian's plan and strategy because that can always create victim mentality of, well, I just did what you told me to do. Or conversely, for great performers, I don't want them just to do what I think needs to be done. I want them to have that learning and enriched experience to say, okay, got it. Thanks. I know what's expected of me, but let me now go do it. And thank you for supporting me and thank you for developing me. And it's about developing people in those unique ways based on their unique experiences and their unique cultures that where they are maybe in the world.
I totally agree. And as you're talking about the guardrails, the other thing that ideally to have it be a lived experience and not words on a wall is when your values are actually operationalized. So great, we take care of pets, awesome. But the values become how you do it. Like, how do you approach situations? I think there's a great quote from Roy Disney that says it's easy to make a decision when you know what your values are. So we do a lot of work with our clients of, so what does this look like in action? And when you're wondering how to approach a situation, that's like your playbook. That's your filter. If you've actually translated those values into what does that look like from an action standpoint? If they're just words, everyone can have their own interpretation of what respect means or what integrity or whatever that is. But when your values are really clear and specific and you say, this is what this means that we do boom, 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 then it's like, oh, I know how I need to approach this situation. And that becomes your playbook. And I think, when people show up consistently not in alignment with the purpose, not in alignment with the values, you go back to the A players, C players, it erodes your brand, it erodes culture. And I think sometimes it feels easier to ignore, or we go, oh, they're a great salesperson, even though they're toxic, or they're a great physician, even though everyone hates them, or they're a great fill in the blank. They're good at their technical job, but they suck from a cultural standpoint. And yet we put up with it. It's so fascinating to me.
It really is. And you talk about like values, we have our 5 principles, and it's really exciting when we see those in action by our leaders that really are bringing that to life. The 2 I was going to mention was responsibility is one of our principles. And then I love to see that when our leaders really understand how we have the responsibility to make the right environment for, in our case, our associates worldwide, is to let them do what they can do best. We really have this responsibility to make a difference in our communities' lives, in our people's lives, in pets' lives. And then the other one I was going to mention was mutuality. I always love that because it does become a shared benefit. It's not just what's going to be good for you. Like, what's a mutual decision, And in our case, maybe it's mutual it's got to be good for the pet. It's got to be great for our associates, and it's got to be great for our clients. And when we can do that, it becomes truly mutual. We're solving the problems potentially of everyone, but we're solving the opportunities to really keep that human animal bond even stronger and just keep that love for pets going.
I love it. So you said you've had some mistakes along the way. What is one of the we're just gonna go like, hey, this is fun, right? Because accountability and like vulnerability are like one and the same, right? You can have both. So what is like one of the biggest squiggles, detours, whatever you want to call it, that you had in your leadership journey and that brought you maybe some of the most valuable learning or the most valuable lessons that helped you grow?
So many of them. How much time do we have here?
Pick a couple. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh goodness, I've had so many just incredible experiences, and hopefully many of them were better than not so good. But I learned so many lessons from the ones that were maybe I wasn't as optimal as I'd like to have been. I think I mentioned something earlier about, and as you mentioned something about like kids, they're responsible for their grades. That was something that took me a while to learn. We are responsible for our own emotions, and spending time to really understand, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? Why is that a trigger for me? This is a me issue. It's not a them issue. And I think, early on in my career, I think when I look at my journey, you go from this almost individual contributor, or, capital I, or, capital M me, because you're trying to like work hard and show everyone how good you are and what you know. And what you come to find out is really no one cares what you know. It's about how you actually make people feel. It's not about what you do. It's about how you make people feel. And I think there was a shift in me of when I got to a position in which I personally couldn't do the work any longer. I really needed a team to do it. And I remember having the team that was now quite large and quite dispersed. And I didn't give people enough time to really implement things because I was stuck in an old job of like, oh, we should be able to get it done fast, 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 fast. And what I realized I was doing was I was setting the pace, which sometimes is good, but it's only as good as if you're actually working with your people and listening and understanding, do they have the time and space to do the work? And so the pace I was driving, I could argue, was a good pace, but it wasn't one that was bringing everyone along. And through that, I was driving action and activity, and we really weren't driving impact. And it wasn't until I finally stopped and I talked to one of the leaders, and I'll never forget this. I said, look, I care about this team tremendously, and I care about all of you. And my desire to make an impact can get in the way. I understand that. What is it that you need, and what feedback can you give me in terms of what we need to do differently, but more specifically, what I need to do differently? And I'll never forget it. And she said, is this a safe space? I'm like, absolutely. And she said, give us time. She said, look, your pace, we love the urgency, but we haven't been able to align our people. So we have a meeting, then we have to go align our teams, then we have to go into, our locations and make sure they're following through. And sometimes they need more than 2 weeks to actually make that behavior. And she said, you've lost your perspective of how it actually takes to disseminate information, to align teams, and actually put things in motion. And I was so valuable for me because one, I was so thankful that she gave me that feedback. But two, that's when it brought me back to, oh my gosh, I have got to put myself in the shoes of the people in the front lines, because I'm approaching this from my position and saying, why isn't this done yet? And it takes time to cascade information. It takes time to, teach people the new behavior or the new expectation. And I never forgot that, because it was my first time of really saying, oh gosh, I lost the connection of actually who's doing the work. And so that was a big mistake, because it probably set us back, or actually it didn't advance our agenda as fast as we wanted to. But once we did that, I then was able to contract differently with the team and say, okay, so what is the strategy? How are you going to implement? How are you going to align? And when will we start to see the results? And they then said, this is when you can hold us accountable. And what it did is actually gave them space, it gave them oxygen, it gave them energy to do their work. And once they did that, then the results really started to create that flywheel effect. So that's just one.
It's a powerful one, and I'm laughing with you, Brian, because even as a small business, like, I don't know what it takes to get stuff done, and my team knows this about me. I'm horrible. I have tried every trick in the book. I triple the amount of time I put on my calendar for something, and things always take longer than I think they're going to. So I don't know. Maybe there's something in my brain that doesn't work with time. I don't know. But I'm like, what? This will take what, a couple weeks? And they look at me like I have four heads and are like, that's like a 6-month project. What planet are you on? And I'm like, I don't know. But I rely on that, because then when we are setting our priorities for the year and even each quarter, we do our quarterly offsites and kind of look at where are we at? Are we still on track? Do we need to adjust? And what's our focus? What's our rally cry for the next quarter? And so I finally, with one of my team members, I was like, okay, I have no idea how long, like, just this day-to-day stuff, like like the social media, whatever, take. And this is not about micromanaging, just like, let's map it out so we know how much time actually left. That, okay, if we're going to forward this new fill in the blank, this new project, this new strategy, this new initiative, how much time is actually available in any given week to work on it? Because it's like, oh, we're gonna do it all, and then like their heads, and and they love what they do, and that's awesome. But also, it's like, then I see my team getting overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, okay, let's have the conversation. How long does this stuff actually take? And then we go back to prioritization. Are there things that can actually be dropped this week that maybe, who cares if you don't get no one's gonna cry if they don't get an e-newsletter from us this week, or you know what? No one's gonna cry if there's only 3 social media posts, like, but it's so funny because it happens here. I'm like, oh God, I did it again.
I mean, that's when I had a shift from, I was shifting from, like, being in a store and running a store. You can control a lot, and you can really stay on top of things on a day-to-day basis. But then it goes from individual contributor to like really team contributor to then empowering leader. And I think for me, when I was able to do that, it wasn't just contracting on what does it take to disseminate information, teach and train, but also the learning I got was I was doing way too much talking. I was doing way too much directing. I was setting the agenda, and I was aligning the team, and I was setting the accountabilities, and it wasn't we were doing it. And more importantly, they. And so I got to really step back, and they got to create the work plan. So they were the source of the power of opening up what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. And then they received the benefit because they were in charge. And I got to facilitate conversation. And it was like, okay, that's not fast enough, or we need to move quicker, or I don't think that's the right priority. I got to play like, a questionnaire, if you will, of like, just, are we on the right stuff, and challenging assumptions and versus director of work. And it was a really powerful lesson. And then what I got to then experience was, I know I quickly mentioned it, but it's like, I then got to experience what was the trigger for me. And that was a me problem, not a them problem. And I had to do the work on like, why does that bother me? Or if I was experiencing something like that person's not personally attacking me. Like maybe they're having a bad day, but like, but they're responsible for their actions. I can't let their behavior impact me. And so I also kind of learned that concurrently with that situation and other situations when I worked for great leaders, or maybe not the best leader, But you kind of understand that. And I got to really just reframe things differently of I control my own behavior. I control my response. And sometimes I'm really good at it. Sometimes I'm terrible at it. Like I'll act like maybe the child and, oh, this is unfair, poor me. But it's, that's not going to be helpful to anybody. It's how do I go from like thinking about that transactional analysis. I don't want to be the child. I don't want to be the parent. I want to be the adult. And as a team, to the extent we can, if we can have those adult to adult conversations, we're going to approach it in a much better way versus I'm the parent. I know what's best for you. Do this. Or, oh, woe is me. It's happening to me. This is unfair. And I'm going to take my ball and go home.
Yeah. I love how you put that. And it's funny you say we want to show up as adults. I mean, we could go on a whole other tangent of this, but the reality is yeah, so many people don't do the work to like understand. And newsflash, like people have heard me ad nauseum on the show, but the stuff that triggers us, like the way we show up predominantly today is not our 30, 40, 50, 60 something year old self. It is our 10-year-old self. Is something's getting triggered and we behave. I mean, when you're like, what is going on? And I would say the more unsettling and disruptive and chaotic our world becomes, it activates that because as human beings, we're hardwired for self-protection. And so it activates that self-protective threat response. And so I always say, like, if you look around and you're having any engagement issues, you're having any culture issues, some new strategy or initiative isn't going the way you want, a change process isn't going the way you want, take a look around because instead of having wise, sage adults trying to move this forward, you have a bunch of 10-year-olds that are trying to navigate complexity. And until we do that work to upgrade those faulty programs that are hijacking us or in the driver's seat, that's going to continue to show up. And different people get activated by different things. And so I think it's so critical that as part of our own work as leaders, but also organizationally, if it's not embedded into your people development and leadership development strategy, it's not just about teaching people the basic skills, which are important of, how do you have feedback conversations and what does it mean to live our values? And all those things are absolutely important. But if it's not including that messy, deep inner work so that people can recognize when that 10-year-old is hijacking them, you're only going to get so far.
You're absolutely right. That's the real work. And, that's another lesson that I learned was trying to see that and understand it and then try to connect with it, not try to argue against it. Meaning, if you see an emotional response from someone, it could be good or bad. It doesn't not. Sometimes we just focus on the bad, but sometimes the highs can be very high, and it's trying to understand like what's happening here, and am I really going to connect to this, or am I going to understand this, or can that be a bit off-putting or scary for some? Because sometimes that energy can be too much for people as well. But it is, not trying to use logic and reasoning when you're dealing with emotion. I remember a few times where I'm like, no, I'm going to show you the data. This is working. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is an emotional situation here. Logic's not going to fix this. We're fighting the wrong battle here.
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest, as human beings, we try to convince ourselves that we are logical, rational beings, but we're not. We are emotional creatures. So if we don't build our own emotional awareness and literacy and all, which is why there's such great work out, between Mark Brackett and Brene Brown and a whole host of others that really are giving us access to language and tools because most of us are not taught how to do that. And we think, oh, that's fluffy stuff. It's like, no, that will mess you up if you don't do that work. I'm just saying.
At the end of the day, it's funny too, is it's almost like when you talk to people and if they're talking about work, they talk about the work that they do or the industry that they're in. And it's like, we're just all people in a people game, really. Maybe it's not a game, but we're in a people business. If you're in business, it doesn't matter if you're for profit or non-profit, we're in the people business. And you may happen to be in technology, or you may happen to be in education, or you may happen to be in veterinary medicine. At the end of the day, it's about people. And it's about how do we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and how do we feel connected to the team in which we decided to show up and be part of. And then do we have the tools and resources, and can we actually do it in our authentic way to the extent we can be? But it's all people business at the end of the day.
I love that perspective. That's a mic drop moment right there. We are in the people business 100%. All right. So I know you said you had like other screw ups. So we're going to kind of take a little twist on this. So as you know, I'm obsessed with normalizing the messiness of being human. And, you're an amazing leader and you've had wonderful lessons and you're still a human being. So I ask all my guests this, Brian, what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And how do you move beyond it when it shows up so that you can still show up as a leader in your life and have the impact you want to have?
Gosh, that's a very, very tough one. And when we go back to that, kind of that parent, child, adult, and it's not personal and just the emotions of what we do, I still am way too slow at recognizing those defense mechanisms of, oh, it's personal, it's a personal attack, or someone doesn't like this, or, and it becomes a belief that I'm working on and I've got to improve, but it's really taking responsibility for what I am doing or what I did, or really reframing it in terms of the positive intent that how are they trying to maybe approach it, or what's in it for them, or why are they doing this? And it becomes maybe not like a self-limiting belief in terms of like I can't get through it, but it does become a major obstacle of how we're trying to connect and advance maybe the work or advance the impact. And I think examples of when I was at my best was like it's always easy to be at your best when you have like great supporters around you and mentors and people that you can actively see that they have your interest in it. But when you don't have that, you then create stories. And my self limiting belief then becomes, oh gosh, if I don't have the person that I expect in the team or the leader that I have, it becomes a belief of, oh, maybe that they don't really have my interest at stake, or they're not going to develop me, or they don't have my back. And I create these self stories of what is happening. And oftentimes I'm potentially not assuming positive intent. And even if it's not negative, it's just neutral, it's just unhelpful. And then that means I'm spending time on the wrong stuff, or I'm spending time on things that are just not going to be as productive as what gives me energy. And that's being with our people and being with our associates and being in our clinics and talking to our doctors and our practice managers and talking to our clients about what they want. And so that's what gives me energy, is about taking care of our people today, making an impact on pets' lives, and thinking about the future and making sure that we're driving towards creating something no one's ever created. But I don't get in that space if I have some of those moments with people that don't maybe fill my bucket the way I want to fill it. And the self-limiting belief becomes a negative story that I tell myself. And it's a story that I made up. And whether it's true or not doesn't matter, but it means I'm spending time and energy on the wrong stuff.
So one, congratulate yourself on being human because you're right. We fill in the gaps with story. That's how our brains work. And I love even like, hey, that's the story I'm telling myself, because that is one of the key things that we teach people. If you just even start using that language, it kind of puts a space between like the fact and go, well, that's the story I'm telling myself. So therefore, is it true? Is it not? Is it serving me well? Is it not? So love that. Love that. All right. Are you ready for quick questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is.
Oh gosh, just listening and learning and being with people.
Love it. When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do you do?
I got to tell myself the real story of impact so I can reframe it and show up.
Nice. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
Oh, I'm more introverted than people realize. I love being with people, and I love listening and learning, but I also love my quiet time and recharging.
Got it. I like it. What is your favorite go to movie?
Oh, that's such a tough one. I would just say any comedy, and I'll say early 2000s, but any comedy, because they have the ability just to kind of disconnect and laugh. I love laughing. I love comedy. I just love the brilliance of all that, and being able just to not take ourselves serious and enjoy life is always important.
Yep. I'm with you. All right. What's your go to song?
A Day in the Life by the Beatles, easy.
Ooh, nice. That was quick. All right. What is something you can't live without?
Ooh, music. I cannot live without music because we have so much stress in our days all the time that when I am in a moment, like that's my meditative moment, is to like even walk out of a meeting, listen to one song. It doesn't matter the song, just listen to a song and it takes me away, and it just kind of gives me an opportunity to reset.
I'm with you. I always say like, man, I can make a soundtrack for any occasion. I love it. I'm with you. All right. What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
You know, something that I've been more focused on over my career was not being defined by work. And I think often we get defined by work. And so with my family, I'm getting married at the end of the month.
Congrats.
Yeah, she's the most important thing, and it's gotten me to see a whole different experience in life. And so I cannot live without her and those moments that we have, whether it's together during the day or it's even a text message. Those moments mean everything.
Oh, I love that for you. All right. And what are you grateful for right now?
Oh, I am thankful for so many things right now. I think when we talked about being this conversation on leadership, just thankful for the experiences I've had, the mentors I've had, the support I've had in my life, and just people opening the doors. Yes, we as a team had to do the work, but those experiences have really set me up. And I just absolutely love making an impact on people. And I think that's what business is about. It's not about a P&L. It's not about the top and bottom line. It's not about all those. Those are outcomes of the behaviors. So I just love making an impact on people. And I think when companies can be beacons for how companies ought to behave in society, you can really do some fantastic work. And I just absolutely am thankful for that.
Well, you do an amazing job at it. So it's simpatico, I can definitely tell. So one closing question, Brian, if you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
Where we started the conversation, please get closest to your people and throughout all your levels of organization. Develop better routines of listening at scale. When you can listen at scale authentically, people will tell you everything, and you can start to learn about what is or isn't working. And often it may or may not be the strategy. And if something's not working, don't create a new strategy. Actually talk to your people to understand what they're experiencing.
Love it. Love it. Well, this has been such a joy. And just thank you for modeling what it means to continue to be a human, authentic leader, even in a large, growing organization. You're amazing, Brian. Much, much gratitude.
Oh, thank you so much. You're the best. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.